And now I recognize the Ranking Member Cruz for his questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to each of the witnesses. Mr. Shane, let me start with you. Thank you for being here today. Some witnesses and some congressional Democrats have said that the era of airline deregulation is over, that it failed, and that the federal government should re-regulate. I've heard suggestions for the government to micromanage flight schedules, how much someone should pay to transport an extra bag, and everything else in between. These ideas come, of course, in spite of the marked decrease in the price of airfare and a dramatic increase in the number of Americans who've been able to fly since the Airline Deregulation Act was enacted in 1978. In your judgment, what should we be doing to further the miracle of deregulation, which is the term you used in your testimony?
As I said, I think that transparency is the most important regulatory response to an awful lot of the problems that we've been talking about. If passengers are unaware of what's available to them, of course, then they're going to be disadvantaged and competition will not work nearly as effectively as it should. Any of the issues that people are complaining today about are the subject, to some extent, of airline competition. So I understand Southwest, for example, does have indefinite credits when a refund is given. Other airlines put an expiration date on. Well, the airlines that put expiration dates on will notice that they're losing traffic to Southwest because of that important difference, and they will respond. That's how competition works. So I think the Department of Transportation's emphasis on making as much transparency as possible available to passengers has been a very important benefit. Airlines have become, if I can just finish with one thought, incredible competitors. Notwithstanding what we've heard this morning, they, like all competitors, want to compete with each other on the basis of product differentiation. It's very difficult in the airline business to actually tell passengers what makes you different from your competitor. That's why some of the suggestions that airlines be required, for example, to market through all platforms are so antithetical to the very concept of deregulation. You're forcing airlines to transact with companies they may or may not choose to transact with because they can't show their consumers the rich content that they would like to. If you're investing hundreds of millions of dollars in your interiors, in your connectivity, in the speed with which people can check in, all of these amenities, passengers need to know about that. That's what makes competition work. And that's what encourages airlines to keep upping their game. So the idea, as I said, of creating a one-size-fits-all solution to any of these problems is really antithetical to the benefits that consumers have enjoyed thus far through deregulation. I would seriously caution against doing that. We just don't want to go back there.
You know, Mr. Shane, I will say in elected politics, it can sometimes be good politics to pick things that are unpopular and declare yourself the enemy of them. And so, I still recall sitting on the floor of the House not too long ago and listening to the President's State of the Union address, where he talked more about airline baggage fees than he did about how we're going to defeat communist China. And I get people are annoyed at fees. I'm annoyed at fees. People are annoyed at small seats. I don't like how seats have gotten smaller. And it's pretty good politics to say, we're going to ensure that every passenger has a bigger seat. We're going to ensure that every passenger doesn't have to pay any fees. We're going to ensure that every passenger gets a free neck rub and foot rub with every flight. Is there any downside to politicians giving away free stuff? It can be good politics to say, let's mandate, here's all the things the airlines must do for every passenger. But is there a downside when government steps in and says, here's what you must do on every flight?
Yes, Senator Cruz, I think there is a downside. Unfortunately, the downside isn't immediately apparent. The downside comes later as the industry becomes less competitive, as prices begin to go up, as airlines necessarily recoup the cost of providing the services that have been mandated by government in the way they have been mandated. The real objection to a lot of the responses I've seen to concerns about the way airlines perform is that you can't be an airline manager if you're in government. I mean, you just don't know enough.
And just because time is expiring, Ms. Ansley, I want to ask you a question as well. Thank you for your testimony and a very important testimony. What action should Congress take to make clear to the Department of Transportation that they should take the law and congressional intent seriously to protect passengers with disabilities and to get them to enforce the laws that are on the books?
Thank you for that question. We support efforts that would require the Department of Transportation to use the civil penalties it has at its disclosure. It does not use those opportunities sufficiently, in our opinion. And we think that in the Air Carrier Access Amendment Act, there are a list of areas where we feel like we shouldn't be talking about whether or not we should have a civil penalty if there is a violation, if you harm someone, if you destroy their wheelchair. I would hope that we would all agree those are a time when we should have a penalty that is put into place, and quite frankly, that those cases would be referred over to the Department of Justice, just like we have in all other forms of transportation because of the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Thank you.